Hey everyone, this is Mike and today we are back in Destiny 2. I know I only just made a video on the game 2 days ago where I talked about the new exotic, the new Moments of Triumphs event, as well as some changes that came to the raids. But today we're going to be talking about the exotic a little bit more in detail. Now, I did give my first impressions on the exotic 2 days ago in the previous video, but I only had very limited playtime with it. I did like a lost sector with it. I killed a couple of Eyes of Savathun, which are these little orbs of light that are flying around that you need to kill in order to get this season's title, as well as the MMXX title of the Moments of Triumph. But now I've been able to play around with the gun a little bit more. I went into the dungeon with it as well, the Prophecy dungeon, which is the gameplay that you are seeing in the background. And I was actually really surprised by how good the gun actually is, because when I first picked it up I was like, okay, this gun is fun, but it is a little bit of a meme. I still think it is a meme gun. But it definitely does feel a whole lot stronger than I would at first give it credit for. Now, when it comes down to playing it in the dungeon, the main reason why I took it in there was because there are 5 Eyes of Savathun in the Prophecy dungeon itself. There's also 5 in the Whisper of the Worm mission, and the other 40 are scattered around on the 4 different planets that are currently being invaded by the darkness. They have a pyramid ship next to them. Now, when I went into the dungeon, I was like, well, I need the gun in order to shoot all of the eyes, so I might as well just give it an actual try and see if it's any good, because there are a couple of properties to using the relics that I thought could be really good in the dungeon, so I wanted to at least give it a try and see what it was worth. And I was actually really surprised by how incredibly good this weapon actually is. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think this gun is going to take a meta spot in a normal team composition when it comes down to raids or master nightfalls or anything like that, because when you're running a loadout like I am running right here, you pretty much can't take anti-champion mods. Now, of course, you can run someone with a supportive build, like maybe Ariana's Vow to get anti-barrier, then maybe they take something else for like Overload, and then you can have the third person run the Unstoppable rounds or something like that if you need all 3. But then you're basically going to have 2 supports on the team, one running Ruinous Effigy and one running the anti-champion mods, and then you might not have enough DPS for the boss in the end, so it kind of depends on what you are running. There's also some other things that make this gun not as great in high-end content, and that is because you need to run up to the enemies in order to grab your relic, because the main part of this weapon is the interaction with the relic, which, if you don't know how the gun works, basically when you kill something with it, they drop an orb, which is called a relic. When you pick up the relic, you can do 3 things with it. You can just do like a normal basic attack, you can do a slam dunk, which is your heavy attack that does actually quite a lot of damage in an AoE around you, and you can also guard with it. While you're guarding, you take reduced damage, you put a suppression effect on all the enemies around you. It's also a 30% damage increase for everybody else that is shooting it, and then you're also siphoning HP from them, so you're basically healing yourself as well, which is really cool when it comes down to ad control. But when it comes down to high-end nightfalls, I don't think you're gonna be survivable enough in order to like pick up the relic in the first place, and then you need to still survive whilst you're holding it, whilst you're being surrounded by a bunch of other stuff. I do want to try it, but I think it's not going to be as good as it might be in some other content. Now, the reason why I think this is a really good gun in the dungeon specifically is because the first 2 encounters are pretty much a perfect example of things where this gun would work, because you have a lot of ads around you, there are a couple of major targets that are dangerous for you to deal with, but that's where the suppression effect comes into play, and you can basically make really good use of the weapon. Now, you are going to see a cut in between when I do like the run up to the first encounter as well as the first encounter, because I forgot to put Taken spec on my weapons. I got Taken spec yesterday, so I wanted to give it a try, so that is why in the run up to the first encounter my mountaintop does not kill in 2 shots, and then on the first encounter my mountaintop will kill in 2 shots, and that's because I just switched out the mod on the weapon itself. Now, when it comes down to why this gun kind of works in a scenario like this, is because you can run double special, and because I was also able to use my sword for DPS, because if you didn't know, of course the Falling Guillotine Dark Drinkers 2.0 is the best DPS weapon for this first boss in the dungeon, purely because you can one-phase it on a Warlock with Well of Radiance, which is going to see me do as well in this gameplay. Now, because of this, it makes that the loadout is very good, because you have really good ad clear from the Ruinous Effigy. You just pick up an orb, you run around, everything dies around you, you stay relatively healthy because you're siphoning all of the HP from the ads as well. It also allows you to suppress the knights, which the knights are some of the most dangerous enemies in this dungeon as well, because they deal so much damage if they're suppressed. they can't deal damage to you, and you still see that there's a lot of close encounters where I only barely get my healing grenade off or something like that in order to survive, but still it usually ends up working out. So you can already see that even in a scenario that is pretty much the best for this weapon, there are still a lot of risks that you need to take in order to grab the orbs or to use the orbs efficiently, because you do need to get into melee range and get out there. Now, on the other hand, it is still really good in this scenario as well, because it made it a whole lot easier for me personally to make light modes. Now, when it comes down to the first encounter, I usually have a very easy time creating dark modes, because you can just stick to the edges, get behind cover, and then shoot from there with your mountaintop or the wither horse, which is what I was using before I was trying out this combination of weapons. And that is because you can just stand behind there, but usually when you're behind cover, you're also going to be standing in the shadows, so it's kind of annoying to make light modes from time to time. But if you're able to kill some ads, or maybe for example you bring a knight low and then you kill him with the Ruinous Effigy's laser beam, and then you pick up the relic that it creates, you can literally just run up to the other knights and then just smack him in the face with the orb itself and create your light modes that way. So I am gonna make a lot of mistakes in this first encounter because I'm still trying to get used to the weapon and that stuff. And also like see how far it dunks and that kind of stuff, because when you use the dunk attack you kind of lunge forward a little bit as well. So kind of seeing how far I could actually get before I would switch into like light or dark or something like that. So you're gonna see me take a whole lot more rounds through the ads than is normally necessary. But I was trying to play it safe to basically just get the one phase off, which is something that you can do on Warlock, of course. Now, the reason why this loadout works so well, kind of going back to that topic, is because the Ruinous Effigy is incredibly ammo efficient. You are going to literally be using less ammo with this weapon than you would with a normal primary ammo weapon, and that is because you're mainly going to be doing damage through the relic weapons and not with the Ruinous Effigy itself. And because of that you can run a second special weapon. In this case I'm going to be running Mountaintop because it allows me to shoot enemies from afar and then basically finish them off with Ruinous Effigy, or of course if I can get in close I can just use a relic to kill those enemies. And then of course the Falling Guillotine is an incredibly good DPS weapon when it comes down to the boss itself. Now, on the second encounter of the dungeon, the Heaven or Hell, basically the Wasteland, at least I believe it's called Heaven or Hell, it's also incredibly good because you can just, it's a lot, again, very ad heavy, but when you kill one of the enemies, you pick up a relic, you can literally just run to one of the blights, hold your guard attack, you're going to be killing all of the ads that are going to be running towards you, and you're also going to be killing the blight without really having to worry about anything. The only thing that can really kill you during that encounter are the Minotaurs, the invisible ones that are running around whilst you're going from one place to the next, or the snipers. But if you kill the snipers first and then you take care of the ads, then you should have a pretty easy time going through it, because whenever I ran that encounter normally, especially solo, it would be very annoying to kill all of the blights because they usually take up so much ammo in order to kill. Either I would be using something like a Xenophage in order to just 3-shot them, but then Xenophage isn't really very ammo efficient, especially when you're using it for something like killing the blights. But when it comes to Ruinous Effigy, you literally just create one orb, and with that one orb you can kill one blight, and maybe even 2 blights if you're fast enough, whilst also being incredibly safe from all of the ads because you don't have to care about them. Prior to this weapon, you had to kill the snipers, kill the ads, and then you could start working on the blights. Whereas with Ruinous Effigy, you kill a sniper to create an orb, you grab the orb, and then you just stand underneath a blight, kind of AFK a little bit until it dies from your damage over time effect, and then if there's still any more ads alive, you can just use your heavy attack and kill all of them and then move on to the next one. Of course, not taking out the snipers immediately is still a little bit risky because they'll still do a lot of damage, but it's something that worked incredibly well, and I think is going to be my go-to weapon when I do finally go for this solo flawless. Now, once you're past these 2 encounters, first and then of course Heaven or Hell, you go into the hexahedron, and then from there on out this gun loses a lot of its strengths because the snipers are doing so much damage to you that even whilst you're guarding, it's not really going to help you as much. So that's where you can already see that the gun isn't necessarily all that amazing. When it comes down to high ad counts and stuff where you can just siphon a lot of damage from, also being able to suppress the enemies around you, because again, in the hexahedron encounter, you also can't suppress those snipers because they're too far away from you. That is where the gun starts to see a lot of weaknesses. So if there are encounters where you have a very high ad count and you can basically run up to all of the dangerous enemies and suppress them, this gun will be incredibly good and very useful. But when it comes down to enemies that are doing very high damage to you, that are maybe too far away to be suppressed, then that is where this gun will start to fall off. But regardless, I think that the weapon design behind this gun is incredibly cool. I really would love to see some more weapons like this. For example, Wither Horde, I think, is a very unique weapon as well. And it basically just makes me very hopeful to see some more unique weapons going into the future as well, because some exotics are incredibly boring. They might still be fun to play with, but when it comes down to like being a unique weapon, they don't really stand out as much as something like, for example, this one or the Wither Horde, because I think the design behind them is incredibly cool. They are really fun to play with. They are still have those niche situations where they are going to be extremely effective, like for example the first half of the Prophecy dungeon. And that basically just makes me very hopeful to see more of these kind of weapons, because a weapon doesn't always need to be incredibly good in order to be fun to play with. Sometimes just having a meme of a weapon that has a couple of good situations to use it in and just be a lot of fun to play with is a whole lot better for a game than something that is just purely efficient or very universal to use, like something like the Anarchy or the Xenophage or something like that. But yeah, those are kind of my opinions on this current weapon, on the Ruinous Effigy. A lot of fun. Definitely going to be playing around with it a little bit more. Maybe when you see my solo flawless win that finally ends up happening for the Prophecy dungeon, you might see this gun in there as well for the first half. Not 100% decided on whether or not I'm going to be using it, especially for the first encounter yet. For Heaven or Hell, I am 100% going to be using it because I do think it is the best for that one. Let me know what you think of the gun itself if you've had the chance to try it out yet. But yeah, this is going to be it for me. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for supporting me, and I'll see you in the next one.